Hello all, Rick here. So this video adheres to the shows as a primary source of lore, but will flesh out blank spaces in the file with content drawn from Apocrypha where it does not contradict. So bear that in mind that later life postings, such as the Challenger in Geordi's case, may not have come to pass at all if future lore contradicts this. Geordi LaForge was born on February 16th, 2335 in Mogadishu, Somalia of the African Confederation. His mother was a Starfleet Command Division officer, Silver LaForge, and father, a Starfleet exozoologist, Edward LaForge. Geordi was born blind thanks to an incurable nerve defect, and a few years later, his sister Ariana was born. At the age of 4, Geordi was trapped in his childhood home as an accident set it alight and he was unable to escape. He considered this the most terrifying 2 minutes of his life until his father rescued him. The following year he was tested and found compatible for a visor, which would allow him to see in various wavelengths. The visor was not compatible with everyone, however, as it sent a large amount of information to the brain, and for reasons still under study, not everyone could interpret them correctly. The visor was also known to produce a continual level of background discomfort and headaches when tired, but spurred on by his experiences, he learned to manage it. As part of his acclimatization, he was taught Vulcan pain meditations to manage the visor's signals. In 2347, he was living with his mother on a science ship, and he was mentored by Nasser Coleridge in several subjects, including archaeology. He attended Zephram Cochrane High School, among several other learning institutes, as his family was often pulled apart by Starfleet postings. He would live months at a time with his father, then transfer to live with his mother, which exposed him to a lot of travel, colony worlds, shipboard and starbase life, as well as a myriad of cultures. During his travels, he learned Halian and several phrases from other languages. In 2353, he took the Starfleet Academy entry test and passed, enrolling in the 2354 class. He often struggled with written tests, which almost cost him his last year. In terms of subjects, he gravitated towards engineering and piloting, inspired by older vessels like the Stargazer and her exploits. He studied warp propulsion and specialised in antimatter power, dilithium regulation, while also studying climate control systems and holodeck programming. He graduated in 2357 at the rank of ensign. His first posting was aboard the USS Victory NCC 9754 as a shuttle pilot under Captain Zimbata. He was part of the investigation into the colony disappearances of Tarchanin 3 in 2362. After this, the Victory was due for routine inspection at Starbase 324 from Captain Jean-Luc Picard, the current head of the Tactical Long-Range Threat Assessment and Response Division. During the inspection, he piloted Picard on a tour of the Victory, and Picard noted the shuttle engine seemed inefficient. LaForge then stayed up all night to repair it, and Picard made a note. In 2363, he was transferred from the Victory to the USS Hood NCC 42296, with a promotion to Lieutenant Junior grade after 5 years as an ensign, under Captain De Soto, where he met William Riker for the first time. Unbeknownst to him, Captain Picard had forced the transfer as he felt Geordi had more to give and had no opportunity for advancement in his current role on the Victory. In 2364, when Picard was putting together his crew for the new Federation flagship, the Enterprise NCC 1701D, he requested LaForge as the navigational officer. In 2364, Geordi was promoted to lieutenant and assigned to the USS Enterprise. Within a year, however, in 2365 he transferred from command to operations, after the Joint Chiefs of Argyll and MacLeod, who had been responsible for the shakedown crews of the Enterprise, were reassigned. Geordi LaForge was promoted to Lieutenant Commander and took over the role of Chief Engineer. During his time on the Enterprise, next to the Soong family and Data himself, Geordi became one of the foremost experts on positronic circuitry, thanks to his friendship and occasional maintenance of Data. In 2367, he was transformed along with others of the Tarchanin investigation team into a shadow alien lifeform before being restored. In 2369 he met Scotty on the USS Jenolan at the discovery of the Dyson Sphere, and in 2370 his mother, the Silver LaForge, was listed as missing in action, presumed dead. Lots more happened, of course, but as with other files, I'm glossing over the series as that's all on screen to see. In 2371 he was kidnapped by Tolian Sorin and brought to the Duras sisters. They compromised his visor and used it to spy on the Enterprise, learning its shield frequency and inflicting catastrophic damage, bringing the flagship down on Viridian 3. In 2372, he was assigned to oversee the engineering department of the shakedown of the newly christened USS Enterprise NCC-1701-E. During this year, he was pressured by the Admiralty to get ocular implants as the visor was considered a security risk. Fortunately, it had been something he had been mulling over for a long time, and eventually made the choice to get implants. That's a dicey situation. In 2373, he was part of the team who wound up being sent back in time to 2063 to meet Zephram Cochrane and oversaw the restoration of the Phoenix. In 2375, his optic nerves were regenerated by the metaphasic radiation of the Baku homeworld, and he was able to experience natural sight for a few days, enjoying the view of an unfiltered sunrise. He was also part of the team that oversaw the attempted peace talks with Praetor Shinzon of the Romulan Star Empire in 2379. Shortly after this, the recovery operation of the Enterprise D's saucer had been completed thanks to the Prime Directive demanding no evidence of alien life influence the inhabited Viridian system, and Geordi began drawing up blueprints and theories on how to go about rebuilding the Enterprise D as a side project. Now, we don't know in canon who his wife was, but the two had been a thing by 2380, and in the anti-time future it was Leia Brahms, but this is unlikely to have been maintained in the Prime timeline. But he had 2 children with his wife by 2380, meaning that they were likely a couple by Star Trek Nemesis. Their 2 children were Sydney and Alandra LaForge. Both would continue LaForge's love of starships, but Sydney would train to be a pilot, while Alandra would be an engineer, both following in their father's 2 career choices. It is possible that during this time, Geordi was assigned to the Corps of Engineer vessel, the USS Challenger NCC 71099, as its second officer briefly. In 2381, however, as part of Admiral Picard's evacuation efforts for the Romulan supernova, Geordi transferred to Utopia Planitia to oversee the construction of the evacuation fleet and provide a more stable environment for his children. He was promoted to Commander, where he worked alongside many officers from numerous divisions to coordinate the biggest fleet construction project the Federation had undertaken. This major shift resulted in many shipbuilders requesting reassignment, however, and he was reluctant to implement the A500 synth project to bolster the workforce needed, but eventually capitulated and even pressured the need for them. In 2385, the synth attack occurred while LaForge was on Earth, resulting in the loss of the evacuation fleet and the last 4 years of his work. He takes a leave of absence for over a year, returning to Starfleet in 2387. In this year, he designed a small, nimble, warp-capable craft designed to convey red matter in a daring plan to collapse the Romulan supernova. Named the Jellyfish, he considered himself the original pilot, but Ambassador Spock refuted this, citing LaForge had more to live for, and it was a highly dangerous mission. Plus, Romulus had been Spock's responsibility for most of his post-Starfleet life. Depending on when the original Earth space dock was relocated to Athan Prime and replaced with Sol Station, this is where LaForge's career becomes a little hazy. It's possible that in 2397 he becomes the captain of the USS Challenger, NCC 71099, and was promoted to captain. Eventually, however, he is promoted to Commodore and assigned as the head of the Athan Prime Fleet Museum, where, among other historic ships like Voyager and the Stargazer, the saucer of the Enterprise D remains. He then spends the majority of his years overseeing the museum and is eventually joined there by his daughter, Ensign Alandra LaForge. As a side project, he uses his authority to requisition the hulk of the recently decommissioned USS Syracuse NCC 17744, a Galaxy-class starship and makes use of its components and star drive to form a replacement secondary hull for the Enterprise D. He intended to have it space-worthy by Frontier Day 2401 as a surprise for his former crewmates, and for the most part, he succeeded. In his spare time, Geordi enjoyed building miniature ships of various eras, competitive games like chess and poker, as well as numerous activities like swimming, skydiving, and fencing. An ongoing passion of his was researching old engineering lore and expanding his own understanding of his field, tinkering with new methods of improving the Enterprise, and basically he made a hobby of going the extra mile because he liked what he did. We can see from his file that he spent a great deal of time as a humble ensign on the flight deck of a shuttle bay or running courier duty. That is until Captain Picard met him and saw how diligently he worked and the effectiveness with which he could conduct repairs. Picard did him a favour with his reassignment to another vessel, as it allowed Geordi to begin to climb the ranks and move beyond his initial postings. And in fact, we see an explosion in his career after joining the Enterprise, moving up through the ranks and position year over year, finding his home in main engineering and setting an example on the flagship of the Federation. Geordi worked best when he was tackling problems, from massive techno-jargon epiphanies to smaller adjustments and working with his own engineering team. Where the character infamously failed was in romantic situations, where he seems to continually put his foot in his mouth, make bad decisions, and overall, all that competence he showed in every other area of his life evaporated. Honestly relatable. With friendships, however, he was a solid part of the crew, who at times could be exasperated with atypical or illogical behaviours in others, but he was at least a compassionate and understanding character, only really curt when he was busy, but otherwise willing to lend an ear and offer advice, especially to Data. It's interesting to see that with his daughters, each followed his career in their own way, with both being interested in starships. Sydney chose to pilot them, as LaForge had been a shuttle pilot, and Alandra picked up his knack for engineering and the actual construction, although both were competent in their sisters' roles too. I think some good Geordi-centric episodes that help flesh out his life and character are the Season 7 episode Interface, where he has to come to terms with the disappearance of his mother and lack of answers. Star Trek Generations, which of course is an ensemble film, but has some strong Data Geordi moments. And while it's a bit hard to pin down an episode in particular with Picard, as it's not episodic, I'm going to say that the latter half of the series paints Geordi in a strong light, and showing that despite his awkward history at times, he ends up in a good place. So what do you think? What other appearances were strong Geordi moments? I think he really worked well when he had a problem to solve, more so than social situations to navigate, and most of my favourite bits are him finding solutions or taking pride in his tinkering. Thanks for watching this personnel file on Geordi LaForge. I've been Rick, and until the next one, goodbye.